Hello and welcome to The Scramble. I'm Jenny Liese. Today we're going to talk about concussion controversies with the NFL and a huge lawsuit that was recently settled. Also, we'll talk about how many states are legalizing marijuana for medical purposes and how the federal government is responding. Joining us are a group of panelists. We have back with us Heather Fayerverger, a senior in journalism and media studies with a minor in criminal justice. And we are welcoming several new panelists to the show, including Sara Montes de Oca, a graduate student in journalism and media studies, Padilla, a senior with a double major in journalism and media studies and political science, Jason Holley, a graduate student in journalism and media studies. Welcome. Thank you all for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. With football season just starting, concussion lawsuits have been in the news. The NFL settled the huge concussion suit for $765 million. Thousands of former players were involved in the settlement with the NFL, which involved more than 4,500 plaintiffs. The heart of the lawsuit comes from the plaintiffs' allegations that the NFL led a deliberate misinformation campaign to deny scientific data being presented in the medical community about concussion risks. Do you think the NFL should have settled at more money? And should the NFL have taken more precautions for the players throughout the years? Let's start with you, Heather.
Well, I think $765 million is chump change to the NFL. They're worth billions of dollars because, I mean, it's not necessarily that it's exactly divided up between the 4,500 plaintiffs, but if it were to be so, it'd be $170,000 per plaintiff, which barely covers the medical costs or whatever could have happened. So I definitely think that they could have forked up a little bit more money.
So you're thinking, I mean, this is really just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I think is it was that to just get it settled and get it over with before the season started. They didn't want it to disrupt the NFL season.
Jason, where do you weigh in on this?
Well, I look at it as a graduate student, Sara and I, from a social scientist perspective. So I'm looking at it as to, well, at what cost does the NFL, I mean, to what extent are we going to put these people through? And it just comes down to how much do we want to watch sports and, you know, very dangerous sports like the NFL and football at large. So I don't think these people should really, you know, or the players. I mean, nonetheless, the NFL didn't disclose possible brain damage back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and early 90s until recently. But mind you, this is football, and going into football and going into the NFL, all players should be cognizant of the fact that it is very physically dangerous. So
you're saying football is inherently a rough and tumble sport.
It is inherently a rough and tumble sport, and we should also realize as fans, as watchers, as consumers of this media, that this is going to be the nature of the game. This is the nature of our society, that we are engaging in the consumption of this product. These people are in turn putting themselves voluntarily through this act.
Even with that, though, I mean, and I know that technology has come a long way, but there's the issue of the helmets and padding, and I know that that's one of the biggest things now is they're looking into the safety of it. I mean, even back in the 60s and 70s, I don't understand why that probably wasn't the top issue, but you know, with this, then yeah, they put in extra padding, or I read that the helmets are going to be more equipped to not have such injuries like the concussions.
Sara, where do you weigh in on this? I know you're an avid football fan.
I am, and I'm gearing more toward agreeing with Jason as far as these players. They know what they signed up for. Granted, like he said, many of them were not warned about these concussions or the many damages that it has to, you know, severely to their brains and what it can do to them. But again, us as the audience, this is what we want to watch. This is what we want to see. That's what football, a man sport, that we want to see them beat each other up and hurt each other, and that's what keeps us, I think, captivated.
because of course other injuries have also been prevalent, that people back injuries, other injuries, but this is kind of like a new thing. But you're saying that it's kind of, it goes with all the other injuries, and they should be aware.
It's what they signed up for. So I think that before going to NFL, I mean they've got to be playing for years, whether it's college or even through high school, and most of them I think come prepared for what's to come.
And Bree, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I tend to think that you blaming, the hullabaloo, I guess, that surrounds the NFL might be a little bit too easy. I mean, they knew for decades that people were getting injured. I mean, 3 NFL players, they committed suicide as a result of the complications of the traumatic stress that was done to their brain, and what is that cost? And then the $170,000 per player, it's actually going to be dispersed over 20 years. So they're not even seeing that compensation. I think really, to me, what stuck out at this issue is the fact that they want that education, and the misinformation that they felt was being allowed not even to be explicitly articulated, but kind of just fester in the culture of the man's sport. By downplaying the risks, people lost fathers and husbands. I kind of still wrapping myself around that one too.
Yeah, I think just the conditions under the suicides were kind of shocking.
Well, in the ones that I found in the articles, it was CTE that was found in their brains, and that's basically like a chronic traumatic brain injury, and in each suicide, I guess the most prevalent and the most well-known was Junior Seau, and I believe of the Chargers.
There's also Shane John it too.
Yeah, they found those injuries in their brains in their autopsies. So, and that comes from concussions. So,
well, I wouldn't expect anything different. I would expect CTE to be present in everyone that plays football, perhaps even the recreational players. But there needs to be kind of some action taken in regards to educating these people that go into football.
Which is, I agree. Sorry to interrupt,
sure.
but only a minute percentage of the settlement is actually directed towards that, which I think is really interesting.
Well, a minute is directed towards research, which I think is even further off board, because we're talking about research into actually the physical characteristics of the brain and the science of that. That need not be done at all. We have enough research being done on the science of the brain. Go ahead and start a program where you educate new players and about the ramifications, the long-term ramifications of playing football,
But
be it
if it's a
professional
rough
or
and
not.
tumble sport and it's par for the course, like you're kind of flipping the coin a little bit.
I'm not. I mean, they should be aware that it is, rough and tumble from the get-go. Everybody knows that. I mean, this is the classic example of the mother not wanting their child to play football because it is rough and tumble, and it is damaging to the body. But on the other hand, not everyone is explicitly made aware of kind of the long-term effects. People don't tend to see things in a big picture. People tend to see things in a very narrow context, and they don't understand that, hey, look, 30 years from now, first of all, your playing career is going to be limited to 5 years.
We're going to have to cut you off. That's all. And we'll be right back after the break.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys know statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat. Visit safercar.gov/the-right seat to make sure your child is protected.
NFC, AFC, offensive linemen, defensive tackles, quarterbacks, and cornerbacks are all living united to ensure the academic success of millions of kids in our communities all the way to graduation day. But that won't happen without you. So take the pledge at unitedway.org. Make a difference in the life of a child. Suit up like your favorite NFL players and become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor with United Way.
All right, and welcome back. All right, and then another question. Do you think that the recent medical risks with professional football has discouraged parents from letting their children play the sport? What are your thoughts on this? Bree, do you want to start us off?
Well, I'm not a parent, but I tend to think parents who do, more allow their kids to enjoy the competitive aspect of childhood. I think they actually, it's part of it, that's kind of, it's gotten into this very masculine stepping stone. You grow up, you try, you do Little League, you do football, and then you stop. But I think what's really interesting is what'll happen in high school and middle school when kids really start getting rougher, and when we start seeing maybe the beginning symptoms of,
So you're thinking when
concussions.
they're younger, it's not as big of a concern until they get older and with high school or college.
And I think also, I don't think people are thinking to apply it, to bring back your bigger picture comment. I don't think people are looking at the NFL and looking at their child or the run-of-the-mill parent and thinking, that's going to be my kid in 15 or 20 years. That comparison just isn't always happening.
Yeah, I don't think it should discourage any parent or any teenage boy to not play. I mean, I just think they have to understand the safety risks involved, and now hopefully, I mean, in another point in an article I read is the NFL is requiring players to wear more padding, and they're penalizing the running backs who lead with the crown of their helmets. Even playing in high school and college football, they should understand the risks as well, and they should take the safety precautions so that their injuries don't stem from such a young age.
I mean, and I think kind of just to build off of that, I think the impetus is just even more on the NFL to do that. And I think that was the whole point, is that this is just a drop in the bucket. And I think that the lawsuit and avoiding going to discovery and really knowing what the NFL hid from its players or didn't, that maybe pushing towards getting them to properly educate their players and really make that part of football culture more knowledgeable, at least. At least I would hope that that's what would happen.
All right, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic for today. So moving on, medical marijuana has been a hot topic lately. The Justice Department isn't challenging state laws legalizing marijuana and is focusing federal enforcement on more serious trafficking cases. But it will remain illegal under the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Currently, there are 8 medical conditions for which panelists can use cannabis, including cancer, glaucoma, and severe seizures. Now, have recent studies and changes in some state laws redefined the stigma of marijuana, both medically and or for recreational use? Jason, do you want to start us off on this one?
Absolutely. Look, we all know that marijuana for medical use is a great thing. Okay, it does alleviate many symptoms that can't be alleviated in a way that other prescription drugs can. But what it comes down to is, can marijuana be used recreationally? I don't know. I mean, look, it comes down to a cultural thing. We have a culture that sees marijuana as being a very harmful substance. We see it as a gateway drug. And perhaps there are some that are involved in organizations that would confirm that it is a gateway drug when it's used recreationally. So I think it comes down to the culture. And, this culture is really not going to change in the near future. And as such, I don't see marijuana being legalized in the near future, just because of the nature of who we are in this country. So
there's also differentiation between decriminalization and legalization, and we've already gone leaps and bounds, at least in the past 10 years, as far as decriminalizing it. Small cities and states aren't pressing charges against people who get caught with small amounts of marijuana, but even further than that, there's 20 states that have at least moderately legalized it in some way. It's in the system. I think the merit of marijuana recreational use is almost a moot point. It's kind of like there's medical uses for alcohol.
And Bree,
and
I'll actually cut you off right now, but we'll start with you back when we come back right after the break. We'll have more.
Ever wonder what makes us, the Smurfs, so happy? The forest, of course. This is where we, along with the beautiful forest creatures, make our home with beautiful plant life, clean water, and endless adventures. It's a place to celebrate. So discover the forest with your family today. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Oh, hey, bud. Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
I've been meaning to ask you, is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No.
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
We have a job to do out here today.
To be a winning team, you have to work like a winning team.
My team depends on me.
And my team is 50,000 strong. Looks like a lot of work's going into this.
This is what it feels like to be part of a team.
A winning team.
The Action Team.
Action Team! Get in on the action at actionteam.org. Are you in?
All right, welcome back to the show. And we're talking about medical marijuana and how some state laws have been changing the legalization of marijuana and how that may have affected the stigma or changed that. And Bree, we were talking with you last.
Yeah, and I was just trying to articulate that I really think that there's such a strong remembrance of the recreational use of marijuana and everything that's associated with that culture that we aren't really allowing ourselves to enjoy the actual medical merits of studying cannabis. I mean, Sanjay Gupta's article, where he reconciled with weed, I guess you could say, it mentioned that small labs outside of the country were kind of making progress in leaps and bounds in regards to medical marijuana, and none of that's happening here. And I really don't think it's because of people knowing too much about what is actually happening to their bodies, what they're taking in, which cannabinoid is actually helping them out, because this, yeah.
Well, I was saying, medically, I don't know if you all are familiar with the little girl Charlotte. I believe she's 6 years old. She's the one that was in the news about how, not necessarily taking marijuana in its common form, not smoking it, but she was getting doses of THC and CBD in food. But this little girl went from having seizures, to the point where she could not function on a daily basis. And now she's at the point where maybe she only has 2 or 3 per month, and that's where, how young do you have to be to take the medical marijuana? But you know what? If it could be a life-saving drug. It got to the point where they didn't know if she would survive. Her oxygen would be cut off, and now she's a normal little girl.
And I think it definitely could help as far as medically, but also taking into consideration that a lot of people abuse this medical marijuana, that they go to the doctors and say, I have a lot of stress, I can't sleep at night, and it's just so easily discarded by the doctors and given and just prescribed, and here's a medical marijuana card, and even they become drug dealers and give it to their friends. And how can that really affect then the community and the culture of, I have a medical marijuana card, do you need some, and making a profit out of it as well.
And then that also will ask more questions about how the implications with children and using marijuana. I mean, do you think that people, including children, should be taking medical marijuana? I mean, obviously for this girl that was 6 years old, it was necessary. The parents had tried every absolute avenue, but should we put our trust in doctors when they're prescribing things to children?
Well, if I could, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, children should be, if they're diagnosed appropriately, they should be issued THC or marijuana in accordance with their symptoms if it's necessary. But look, the reason why we're talking about this issue altogether is because of the cultural stigma, the stigma attached to marijuana.
The thing is, it's not THC. It's actually it was CBD. Or CBN. There's more than 480 different chemicals in marijuana. of those 44 are cannabinoids, and our bodies actually have receptors for each one.
Well, take hemp, for example.
The psychoactive one is THC.
Well, what about hemp? Hemp used as a biofuel, right? We don't use hemp as a biofuel because it is still categorized federally in the law as being marijuana. It's not marijuana. It has no THC. If you were to smoke hemp, it were to give you nothing more than a headache. But yet we don't grow it and use it for biofuels because we have it categorized in these straw man argument type of laws, which are umbrella laws. They need to be changed. We need to rectify these things. So.
Yeah. What do you think, Sarah?
I think that depending on the diagnosis of the child, that if it's going to help them, like the case in which Heather was talking about, if it helps them, then absolutely, rightfully diagnosed, the rightful measures taken to help that child, suffer, go from seizures every day, not being able to function, to in the decrease to 2 to 3 a month.
You definitely have a point there, and we'll be right back after this break.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Hey, you going out like that?
Yeah, why?
Well, what would the neighbors think?
I see you! Come look at Mr. Feather! Look what I have. Mr. Bird, remember? Bark, bark, bark! We're just playing! We're just playing on trying to get you out of here!
Even still.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
All right, welcome back. And we are talking about medical marijuana, and recently Dr. Sanjay Gupta said he changed his opinion towards weed. He is quoted as saying, "I apologize because I didn't look hard enough until now, and I lumped them with the high visibility minglers looking to get high." Do you think doctors have thoroughly researched the marijuana in the past, or have the lack of technological advances been the handicap? What do you think about this, Bree?
I don't think technological advances or lack thereof has absolutely anything to do with it, at least as far as the study of marijuana, researching medicinal marijuana's merits goes in the U.S. I think, researchers have a really difficult path to follow and road to tread when you're trying to help people with a substance that's scheduled as, more addictive than cocaine. So I'll just hand it off to somebody there, because I really don't think there are any limitations insofar as what we have. It's all the laws.
We do know, though, that technology, 40 whatever odd years ago wasn't the same as it is now. But I think Dr. Gupta did see, stuff on his own. It's not so much the studies in the past, but he was looking at newer studies and said, wow, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought. And I believe in the quote in there somewhere too, he states, basically I was just listening to other people's word for it, and I didn't realize the benefits that could come with it.
Well, what's interesting is that there were a couple of studies done in American labs decades ago, the LaGuardia Committee released a study saying that medical marijuana had, it was a treatment for convulsions and anxiety and could help people eat when they were unable to, especially when they were hospitalized. And that was just the door was slammed on that the second that it was criminalized in 1945. So it's, like I said, I really think it's just there's a lack of a push or a want to go there here.
There are so many benefits to marijuana just outside of the medical area. I mean, and it's really just kind of the, these laws that stay the same, that are very archaic, that are dogmatic in scope, that are perhaps overarching in the sense that they don't allow intricacies to be used or for advantages of intricacies like the use of hemp for biofuels, the use of medical marijuana as opposed to perhaps recreational marijuana. There needs to be sort of a greater distinction made because this is a very valuable, obviously very valuable substance, plant, whatever you want to call it, that can help in a myriad of ways. So,
what do you think, Sarah?
I think people need to be educated and do their homework and really see what the benefits of this substance can be and how they can really studies in which that it has helped people's health, in which it has really I don't want to say a promotion of it, but just to see the benefits as opposed to just the negative aspects of it and how it being used recreationally can really damage.
Absolutely, and plus, I mean, it's so difficult to even do some of these studies because it's an illegal substance. So from these universities to even get the stuff to study is difficult. All right, and that's the time we have, and we'll be right back after another break.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I don't think anyone captured my first steps on camera. I was the 5th kid, and by that time, first steps weren't a big deal. I was 16 and driving home with my brother Ben. A distracted driver hit us. Ben died on impact. I had 47 days in a hospital bed for reality to settle in. With a major spinal cord injury, doctors said I would never walk again. But deep down, I knew I would. I prayed that every day. Family, friends, strangers, all started to pray for me to be able to walk again. The progress has been slow, and the victories hard won, but I feel the prayers.
Whether you need support in a tragedy or just to make it through a bad day, prayer can make a difference. America, let's come together by believing with each other.
For someone to come alongside you and say, I'm going to believe with you, it means a lot.
Thank you all for being great panelists on the show. I know a lot of you are newbies, so this is your great first show. And now you know what we think. Tell us what you think. Share your opinions and any ideas you have on topics you'd like us to scramble about at thescramble.unlv@gmail.com. You can also catch full episodes of The Scramble at UNLV-TV.edu. That's all the time we have for today. For all of us here at The Scramble, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.